Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today for a lovely conversation around one of folks' really most requested topics for help is how to maximize your digital and online work with SEO, search engine optimization. Our friends in the search engine world like to keep us on our toes. So we are going to run through some basics, and we're going to go into even a little bit deeper dive on some of the technical mumbo jumbo that goes and runs behind the inner workings of SEO, talk about some of the tools that you can use to help your SEO, and then we'll want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So a little bit more about us. I am Jen Frazier. I'm the CEO of Firefly Partners. We're a digital agency that I founded in 2007. I've been working sort of in the nonprofit space for now moving into my third decade of this nonsense. It's been great and amazing and fun every day. I work specifically with progressive causes in the nonprofit space, and I'd love to know more about how we can help you do great things with your SEO. So Ben, introduce yourself.
Yeah, Jen, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with the Firefly crowd today, talking about SEO. I've been doing SEO for both for-profits and nonprofits for the last 10 or 15 years, and have really focused my work on social enterprises as well. And so, really enjoy sharing what I know and doing what I can to help nonprofits really connect with their target audiences via the search results pages. And so just thrilled to be here talking with you, Jen, and the rest of the crowd today. Definitely feel free to submit any questions you have in the chat or Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye on those and hope to jump in on those, kind of along the way. I think it'll be more fun if we do it that way. So anyways, yeah, we can kind of get started. But Jen, I know you wanted to introduce Firefly a little bit more to folks.
Seems like most folks have heard about us who are on the call today. I've been sort of promoting this in different places, but hopefully if you know us, hi, welcome, love to have you. If you don't know us, also welcome and great to have you, great to meet you, and great to kind of introduce you to who we are at Firefly. We are a digital marketing agency working in the social impact, social good sector. Again, like Ben said, some of this is nonprofit, most of it's nonprofit. We are kind of pushing our way a little bit into the for-profit social impact business space as well. But we're doing websites, digital marketing, different sorts of support in your digital space, but specifically really kind of honing in on some of the aspects of how we can help you push your mission further, push your cause out into the world, and help you connect and resonate with audiences out there to help and you all do the great things that you do every day. So that's just a little bit about us. So yeah, like we said, we're going to dive in deeper on SEO. So a couple things about what we're going to talk about today. So like I said, we at Firefly work a lot across your sort of digital landscape, ecosystem, those types of things. There's obviously tons there between your forums and your social, your email, maybe you're doing peer-to-peer, different types of events, you're blogging, whatever, you're doing it all. But mostly you want to figure out, how do people find me and where do I mostly drive them? And what are we pushing them all back to? Usually all those other pieces are most of the time driving people back into your website, which is sort of the hub and the centerpiece of all of your digital work. And you might drive them to a specific landing page and things like that, which we'll talk about. But generally also when people get to know you too, they're also going to Google you and they'll find their way into your website. So we want to make sure that how do people find their way to your website, and any of the kind of best practices we're going to come up today with around SEO also can apply to all of the sort of pieces of your digital marketing work. But today we're going to kind of focus on a little bit deeper on the website specifically and what's it mean to sort of optimize the experiences and trying to find those audiences and bring them through the lovely all those search engines out there that bring you in, mostly Google. These are the topics we're going to cover today. A little bit of the basics. If you're kind of new to SEO, you've heard the term and you don't know exactly what it means, we'll kind of cover some of that. We'll talk about Ben's 3 legs of the SEO stool, making sure you've got a very strong component in each of those to make sure that your SEO strategy is strong, going to help again find and bring those right folks to you. We'll talk again about some of the tools that can help all you folks out there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or an SEO guru's expert like Ben. You can find and work through some of these tools even on your own. Don't have to be an expert. And then how to measure and know that all the hard work you're putting into your SEO efforts and strategies are paying off. So that's what we'll cover. So Ben, I'll let you kind of dive in on the 101.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the overview, and we'll just kind of talk a little bit we get into more of the particulars about how SEO works, just to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what we're talking about. Because sometimes there is confusion about terminology and jargon. Search engine marketing kind of has is how I like to think of the term that I like to use to discover anything that happens on search engine results pages and how you can drive traffic to your website. Underneath that, we have two channels. We have SEO and PPC, or pay-per-click advertising. So PPC is really talking about the ads that you see on Google. That's one system. SEO refers to the organic results, which come below that, usually on the search results pages. And they're really 2 separate systems. While there are some things that kind of cross over in between the two, like keyword research is useful in both on both sides of that coin, they really are 2 different disciplines in a lot of ways. And so we're going to be focusing on the organic results and to earn your way into the top pages of the organic results. The 2 channels can work together. They can kind of be like 1 + 1 = 3, where if you show up in the ads as well as in the organic results, that can actually increase your click-through rates overall on both channels. But one is a paid channel and the other one is kind of an earned channel. That's how I like to think of SEO. And as Jen was saying earlier, the cool thing about SEO is that it focuses on the hub for all of your marketing activities, and really what will help your organization show up in the search results is actually what's best for your target audiences. Improve the technical aspects of your website. It's going to improve the content aspects of your website, and then it's going to push you to get the word out, this great content that you have on your website. So it really is, Google wants to keep its users happy, and the way that it does that is by encouraging websites to do what's best for their users. The other thing that I think is neat when you think about the other channels as well that you're using, when you're looking at keyword research, especially on the content side, you're going to be discovering the topics that are of most interest to your target audience. You're going to figure out the language that they use when they're asking questions about those topics, and it's something that you could then apply to social media content or email marketing and headlines and things like that. So SEO can really expand your ideas about content, which is really a great thing for both your organization and your target audiences. In terms of what search engine can do, it can help with a few different things. One is obviously you want your organization to show up for your brand name, right? That's pretty simple. Sometimes I've seen technical issues get in the way of that, and that's like scary. Sometimes that can happen. Hopefully your organization is showing up for your brand name. What's most useful is showing up for those non-branded searches. When people have questions about the topic that you and your organization address, the kinds of knowledge and expertise, and the kind of community that you're developing. When they have questions about those things, that's an opportunity for you to show up in those search results pages and be an authority on those topics, and basically build awareness as well as connections and conversions into supporters. So you can do a lot of different things. There are lots of different the marketing funnel. Search results can play a part in building people into the top of the funnel and then moving them down the funnel as well. One of the things that I love to explain is, it's like, why do I need to do SEO? I've had people ask, what do I need to do to convince the leadership at my organization that this is something we need to spend time and energy on? And the great thing about SEO is that it takes care of the perennial problem of, oh, if I build it, they will come, right? Like if I build a beautiful website with the best designer and the most brilliant web developers, people will just come, right? And while good designers and developers know a bit about SEO, they're not really responsible necessarily for making sure that it's built in a way that people find it. So that's kind of the role that SEO brings, is really creating that visibility, making sure that that nothing's getting in the way of that. The way that I like to explain SEO, as Jen referenced before, is kind of like a three-legged stool. And so these are kind of like building blocks that you can have in your mind as you're thinking about SEO, because it can kind of be a mysterious topic. And with a three-legged stool, you need all three legs of that stool to be solid and functioning in order to have something that you can sit on. And SEO works in the same way, where you need these three components: technical SEO, keywords and content, and links, all working together in order to have a good foundation for creating visibility in search results. So on the technical side, you have to kind of think of what Google is doing every day, and it's basically making a copy of the internet every day. It's got a pretty big job, and it's sending out these little computer programs called bots or spiders or crawlers. People have different terms for these things, but they're little computer programs that follow links around the web and discover content. And when that crawler gets to your website, it runs into roadblocks or detours or issues, it's going to bounce and go to some other website, because it's got a big job to do. So technical SEO is about making sure that the performance of your website is optimized so that those crawlers have an easy time indexing your content. The second leg of the stool is around keywords and content, and this is perhaps what most people, if they know something about SEO, about keywords being a thing, right? And really it's a process of discovering what kinds of topics your target audience is most interested in, and as well as what language they use when they're talking about those topics or asking questions about those topics. And sometimes there can be a mismatch between how organizations or even businesses talk about their product or their service or their topic area, and how people actually think and talk those topics. So once you've got a good idea of what those topics are, then it's a process of knowing where to put those words in your content. And that's where we get into meta tags and alt things like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The third leg of the stool is links. So the first two legs, the keywords and content, those two legs of the stool are kind of like table stakes. If you're going to play the game at all, you've got to have those two things ready. And that's how you get to be one of 15 million results, in the Google search bar.
I love being on that 15 million page. It's amazing.
Right, and we all know that we rarely go to page 2, let alone page 10 or page 150 million, right? The way that you get your content then up to the top is by getting other websites to link to your content. That means you got to have really good content, right? If I have a website and Jen, has a website at Firefly Partners and she wants me to link to her content, she better have some really good stuff that I'm going to want to share with my audience. So that process of going out and reaching out to other websites that might want to share your content with their audience via a link and putting a link on their website pointing to you, those are kind of like votes for your website. So that's a process. You can kind of think about it like PR, like media relations, and getting the word out about what you're doing. So those are the three legs. And what the other thing that I it's important to mention in terms of expectations and channels, like SEO isn't like paid ads or pay-per-click that you can't just like start up a campaign and start spending some money and get traffic to your website. It takes a while. And so it is a long game in that you have to improve your website and develop that content and promote that content. And it takes a while for Google to figure out that your website is actually better than others. And your website has to kind of stick around and be stable and be consistently a good resource in order for it to show up. A lot of times SEO takes more work at the beginning and to get the foundation stable, but then you do have to kind of keep up with it over time because there's competition in those results pages.
Yeah, I like to call it you don't set it and forget it. SEO, like most of the work we do in digital, is really an ongoing sort of monitoring, analyzing, tweaking, going back and analyzing and tweaking. Like you got to just sort of say what's working, because you'll see there are lots of different components that make up a really good and comprehensive SEO strategy. Again, across all your channels. So again, this might be something you're doing on your website and you can monitor that, but then you want to look at, see, how's that working across all my channels? So it does create, and it requires a bit of effort of doing it, knowing it's going to be kind of a long-term investment. And yet the only way to pay your way to the top is to work through the ads, into the pay-per-click. You cannot really pay your way onto the first page of organic results. You can do all the work,
right?
And it sometimes still is like, why am I'm still not showing up in the top 5 or 10, and it can be discouraging. But keep it up. Don't get discouraged. It is a long game, and keep building those links and all those types of things too, as we'll talk about some of these tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like many digital marketing channels, you have to try some things, see what works, see what doesn't, do more of what works, and stop doing what doesn't work. Right. There's definitely some kind of testing and iteration that happens in SEO. So we're going to talk about, give an overview of each one of those 3 legs of the stool, and give you some pointers and some tools, talk about some tools along the way. So first off, we're going to start with the technical side of SEO. I talked about how those crawlers or spiders work, and we have to make them happy in order for our content to be indexed by Google. If you're not indexed, you're just not in the game. And so I've got this slide here that has a good number of kind of technical terms and jargon on it, and I'm going to talk about a few of these just kind of in general. I don't want to bog down here too much because people's eyes tend to start glazing over, and we don't want to, it's lunchtime in some parts of the world, so we don't want to do too much of that. But I do want to point out, especially some free tools that you can use to check out your performance and see if there's anything wrong technically on your site. Google Analytics and Google Search Console are 2 free tools that you can use to see if you've had any issues with organic traffic to your site. And analytics is a good kind of bellwether for if something's going wrong, you'll see it in analytics. on the other hand, while it will provide that information, it will also help you figure out or at least identify problems on your website from a technical standpoint. So it's really handy in that regard. I have it listed here on this slide for helping identify problems with the mobile friendliness of your site. It'll identify specific pages and issues that might be causing problems for people who are trying to visit your website on their phones. And it'll also help identify no-nos like 404 pages, right? Like none of us likes to see the page not found. Yeah, like we don't like it as humans, and search engines don't like that either. And that's kind of like one of those roadblocks that I was talking about before on the technical side. Those 404 pages are just like dead ends, right? And the more you can identify those and clean them up by installing a redirect to a page that does work, fixing the link, etc. Those are things that will indicate not only to humans, but also to search engines that you've got a higher quality site. So those are, again, it's aligning, when you do that SEO work, you're improving the user experience for your target audience as well. And
I wanted you to talk a little bit about the robots.txt. That's the one that I'm like, I think I know the least about on this.
Yeah.
More about robots.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one. So what, when search engines hit a website, they hit a homepage, or they're going to go visit your site, the first thing that they do before they actually start crawling your site is they check a file that's at the root of the server, that's /robots.txt. It's a very simple little text file that gives instructions to the crawlers. Many times there will be little or nothing in there, and usually that's okay. But sometimes developers, like, for example, if you're developing a new site and you don't want it to get indexed by Google, you would put a little instruction in there that discourages Google from crawling the site because it's not ready yet, right? Well, sometimes developers then go and launch it, but then they forget that instruction is in there. And so the site's not showing up at Google, and it starts, the organic search traffic starts going down, and people are like, what happened? Well, we've got to take that line out of the robots.txt file. So there's those kinds of things that can happen with that file. That file, it's also good to put a link to your XML sitemap in that file. So the XML sitemap is like a list of the that you want Google to check out. And you can, in that robots.txt file, you can say, hey, look at my sitemap file over here. So you can kind of link those things together. So there's problems that can happen, and then there's like bonus signals where you can point the crawler in the right direction to find all of your content. So anyways, that's high level.
Yeah.
High level,
as you can all tell, like there's a lot. This is just sort of scraping the surface into some things, and each of these has a lot more we could go into. We want to bore anybody. We don't want to glaze anybody's eyeballs over. But if you have specific questions about any of these things, also, you can shoot a note to Ben and I, and we can have a follow-up chat if you are getting stuck on these, or none of some of these don't make sense, you're not quite sure. We can be happy to chat and tell you more about any of these after the call.
Yeah, absolutely. I get, one other thing that is not terribly technical that I'll talk about here on this slide is pop-ups. We've all seen them, right? The pop-ups that is like, hey, sign up for our email newsletter. Those can be great. If they're too much, especially if they show up and they cover up the whole screen, especially on your phone, Google will ding you for that kind of thing. So it's something to avoid. There are lots of good ways to do pop-ups. Like you can check in an incognito browser. That way you're not in a cookied browser. So a lot of times the pop-ups show up the first time you visit a site, and then after that they go away. If you open up an incognito browser, you'll see what Google sees when its crawlers visit your website. there are good ways or better ways to do pop-ups where you can delay a pop-up showing up until you've scrolled
Partway
down a
down.
bit, or you can have it wait 30 seconds until it shows up. Those kinds of things are less intrusive and they produce a better user experience for people. So beware of intrusive pop-ups.
Yeah, and Google likes them better and stuff like that. So yeah, there are ways to do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump over into talking about the second leg of the stool, and content. And the first step in figuring out, what keywords are for you. And I interchange the word keywords and topics because Google's very good. It's pretty darn smart, and Google knows that it understands what synonyms are, etc. That being said, sometimes people do use, prefer one synonym over another, and you can see that in what's called the search volume. But I often talk about topics because people get a little too focused on like specific words, and many times it's the topic that you kind of need to think about, because topics have subtopics too, right? And there's kind of usually a breadth of ideas that need to get talked about if we really want to learn something. And especially for informational kinds of searches, thinking about topics is really important. So keyword research is the process of figuring out what those topics are and what the language is that people use. And there's a lot of different places you can go to gather ideas. Certainly Google Analytics and figuring out what landing pages and topics are showing up there in organic search from your organic search channel is really important. Search Console actually delivers a lot more keyword level data than Google Analytics does. So that's a really good source as well. But I have some other tools listed here like Keywords Everywhere and SEMRush, Moz Keyword Explorer. Those are paid tools, but they're all very good tools, ones I have used to do keyword research. But you can also do it in a lo-fi analog way of talking to people, right? Imagine that in digital marketing. From interacting with your constituents, whether they be members or clients that your nonprofit serves, you know the kinds of questions that people have and the things that they want to know and the things that they're most interested in about the work that you do. So that's a great place. You can also go to competitors. In the nonprofit world, we often don't think we have competitors, but that do exactly what we do with the population that we serve. And that may be the case, but you're probably not the only dog shelter in the world, right? Or you're not the only food bank in the world. There are other similar organizations that you can go and check out and see what kinds of topics are they addressing, what are they talking about, what do they put in their navigation. So you can check out some similar organizations and see what they're doing. When you come up with a list of topics, you can to check for relevance. Oftentimes Google knows better what we're thinking than we do, which is kind of scary, but true, because it's working with a lot of data, right? And so when you plug that keyword that you think is a great topic for your organization into Google, you can look at that results page and kind of dissect it, like reverse engineer it. Like, okay, does it make sense for me to show up with these other organizations or websites that are showing up here? Does that make sense or not? Is this because Google's giving people what they want? It knows what they want because that's what they're clicking on, right? They're very good at that. It's always a good idea to check that, to check those, to make sure this is actually a good topic for you and your organization. Search volume is the metric that usually tells how many times people search Google in the US in a given month. You can figure out other countries and other search engines as well, because that data is out there. But checking for search volume is the way you're going to be able to figure out what language people use most frequently and what topics important than others to cover and where to focus your efforts. So, those three tools give good estimates about what those numbers are so that you can figure out what to prioritize.
Yeah, I like to point out to our clients a lot that when you are looking at the words that you're thinking about, it's good to get out of your own bubble. Like Ben said, talk to other folks. Really think about, am I really just talking internal speak or jargon and trying to put those into my keywords? That can be dangerous. As the average person out there maybe looking for things related to your organization very well doesn't likely use the same terminology you do internally, and certainly doesn't know a lot of your internal jargon most of the time. Sometimes, again, they're very niche kind of spaces that jargon works well for, or really technical terms can be a way to find, the right people who are actually looking for your very niche kind of, very technical services potentially, but you kind of want to make it a little broader than that and kind of, again, ask. It's a good thing to ask folks, like, what do you think of when you think of my organization? Some of those terms, but the trick is sort of finding ones that you can then get some relevance on. So it's sort of like, can I, be showing up in high results on digital marketing? No, I mean, it's such a generic term that I could never rank well. So I have to think about new and different and interesting ways to come at, nonprofit digital marketing, or, websites or whatever, or other more niche ways of like thinking about and talking about what you do, but don't go so niche that no one is searching on that term. And that's what we found too, is that you can rank really well on a term that no one's searching on. So you have to find that balance between the like, okay, I can actually get a good result here, and it's a term that most, more people are using. It's not like, oh, the 2 people that ever searched on this term are always going to find their way to my website because I rank up, at the top, but it's no one's searching on that term. So you have to kind of look at it from both sides. It's not just about the great result. It's about making sure that you're also working on the keywords that most folks are going to actually put into a search engine. So you have to kind of get, a little bit double-sided on that and think of it in a couple different ways.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. There was one client I was doing some keyword research for not too long ago that, they are in, they're in the field of like animal behavior consultants is the field that they're in. Jen, you probably know who I'm talking about, but anyways, that's their field, right? So they work with, the people that help animals and their owners get over like behavior problems. And that's the term that they use, is animal behavior consultants. And that's fine. And they probably have really great reasons for using that term. What's interesting is that I found that people use the term behaviorist quite a bit, and actually in many ways more frequently than animal behavior consultant. So they probably have really good reasons for using that term, but there may be some ways that they can explain why they don't say behaviorist. Like, they have this other term that they prefer, but they can at least like meet people where they are, and probably start to attract some of that traffic from people who are just going to be using that term no matter what on Google.
So like getting results off of a term that you don't want to use because you're using it, as you're talking about not using it. So
yeah, and I mean, I think that's okay. And people ask for definitions all the time, like, what does this mean? So there's definitely opportunities there. And I think, one of your other points, Jen, is really well taken as well, that a lot of times people are like, well, I want to, rank for, the top term that gets a gazillion searches a month, right? That's like, I don't know, just, minivan or something.
right.
It's like, okay, good luck for that. Like Ford, you've heard of these companies, Ford and Chevy, right? Anyway, it's gonna be really hard and even though there's a lot of volume. The thing that's interesting is that on kind of what we call the long tail, people have questions about minivans, or what the best one is, or who how many kids you can fit in the back. I don't know, like there are all these longer tail questions that don't get asked as much, but there are many more of those kinds of questions than there are if you add up all the search volume on those smaller, longer tail questions, you'll actually get a really great deal of search volume out of answering those kinds of more interesting, more elaborate questions. So yeah, great topics there. All right, so once we figure out what our keywords are, the question is then what do we do with them? So you're going to want to include them in different places on each page on your website. Meta tags, different kinds of meta tags. One is title, which shows up as the blue link on Google. It's also in the tab of your browser, and that's really important. Important signal of relevance in the algorithms. The meta description, you're also going to want to use your keywords there. Those are the 2 lines of gray text that show up in the Google results page, and there's a place in most content management systems where you can enter these things in, and you can customize that and put in a call to action and use your target keyword. I've got a link to in the deck here to a tool that's free at portent.com where you can preview what that meta description and title will look like on Google, because they can only be a certain length. They can't go too long. You'll want to use your keywords in your H1 headings, your primary headings for the page. In the body copy, you'll want to use keywords in your image file names and alt text, which is text that doesn't go up on the page unless you're using a screen reader. And you can also use keywords in URLs as well, because that's a good signal of relevance to people, although it's not necessarily something that search engines look at really hard these days. You always want to write for people, not search engines. So that means no keyword stuffing. Nobody likes that. It's always good to use calls to action. You want to use your target keywords close to the beginning of pretty much all of those elements that I just talked about on that last slide. Like I said before, it's good to cover related topics. Using synonyms isn't a bad thing because people talk about things in different ways. Link out to other related pages from within the body copy. And then make sure you're spell checking and proofreading, right? Send it around. Quality search engines are really, they can tell well-written copy from badly written copy. See, there I go.
Wait, I got a question
yeah.
on that last one that
Sure.
I have in my mind that I think I used to know from days, or I've seen people do still, like not my clients. My clients I've seen people have like hidden text on like, either like kind of behind the scenes or whited out or whatever, that's like just sort of like keyword rich stuff, or and that is that what you might call under a keyword stuffing? Because that's not in your content necessarily. It's this, like I've seen people stuff it into like meta this, and I see it on other websites. I'm like, God, does Google ding you or like kind of give you a demerit if it finds like a block somewhere of like hidden but just like keywords? That's not a big no.
If Google senses that you're trying to game this, it's going to ding you. Yes, it's like, very
play
good.
By the rules, or you're
very good. Yeah. I mean, it's very good at figuring that stuff out. Like, white text on a white background, ding. You're putting even keywords into there's an old meta keywords tag that people used to use, and it's actually, I don't think Google doesn't pay any attention to it, but Bing,
it's just stuffing. So
well, Bing might actually ding you for that. Which if you've got I know people joke about Bing, but like there's a segment of people that actually still use Bing, and usually it's folks that are not that technically savvy and therefore don't, because it's the default on a lot of Office machine or Microsoft-based machines. So, anyways, yes, try and game the system.
Those are no-nos.
As Leslie said in the chat, Google knows you're hiding.
Google knows you're hiding. That's right, Leslie.
Yes,
you can't hide from Google.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the third leg of the stool and why links matter. So I don't expect you to read this this graphic here and know what it's talking about necessarily, because it's the of a survey of SEOs and what they believe is most important in the Google algorithm. The thing that I want you to pay attention to is that the word link shows up in the top 2 items. So while you do need all of this other stuff that we just spent 40 minutes talking about, you need all that stuff for table stakes. You absolutely have to have an inbound link profile that's good from other relevant websites in order to rank well. Like that is the most important thing. So you can't, it's not like you can just do links, because you need content in order to have something to link to, but it's a really important part of the algorithm. So when you're thinking about how to get other websites to link to your site, you got to think first about those other 2 steps, especially the content part, where you've got to have some really good content that shares a unique perspective, that shares more information in a better way, that's maybe more engaging, that has great graphics, etc. You've got to have some really good stuff to in order to have something to basically sell to other websites to link to, right? So all these folks in this list here are not going to link to you if you've just got humdrum content that's not that interesting or not that new or not that different. But when you're going out to kind of sell your content to other websites, it is good to know that as I'm saying here, all links are not created equal. So a link from a local media website, or like in this case I've got on the graphic here, the BBC, is going to be seen as more powerful and more meaningful in Google's eyes than a link from your local neighborhood newspaper. So just know that it's generally harder to get a link from BBC than your local newspaper.
I do it all the time.
So but that's the reason why their links are so powerful, is because they're a very well curated site. The same goes for .edu, like college and university websites, and .gov or government websites. They don't link out a whole lot. So if you have some opportunity for some relationships with those kinds of organizations to get pointing to your content from them, those are great places to go. PR and news sites are great websites to get a link from. Blogs that are relevant to your topic area are a good thing. That relevancy thing is really important. Like you do, if I run an SEO, it doesn't make any sense for me to get a link from some kind of like trade magazine that deals with something that I don't deal with, right? You want some links from other websites that are in your same topic area that are also authoritative. But that process of going out and asking for links is usually something you have to take slow. You have to take it slow. You have to kind of build relationships with folks in order for them to gain trust and recognize that you've got some really good links, content. So I do have, again, 3 tools listed here that you can also look into. Who's linking to your competitors, because they may also want to link to you. Maybe you have some content that's actually better than theirs. So that's another place that you can go to look for opportunities to sell your content, essentially. So sorry, I just skipped by that transition slide, but we're going to talk a little bit about tools now, right? And Google Analytics and Search Console are really good, really free, and
kind of free.
well, you do have to use them. It does take some work to get them set up and going.
Like, what's free? Oh, Salesforce is free. Oh, not quite. It takes quite a bit of work.
Yeah, yeah, right. But they are really useful, and it's like you shouldn't be doing any marketing unless you're tracking it. and you know what you're getting out of it. It's digital marketing. It's all very trackable, and we should know what we're getting out of these different channels that we're using.
Yeah.
SEMRush is a great tool. It's not free, but it's fairly affordable. You can sign up for a month, do your keyword research, figure out who your competitors are linking to, and then say adios. But it's one that I use a ton, and it does pretty much everything. It covers all three legs of the stool.
Yeah. It's a great tool, again, for even like non-technical folks. Get in and use. You can see some of the dashboards. You can really get a lot of information out. I think you get a lot for not a big cost, and it can really help improve. Again, like we've kind of pushed it on every single piece of that stool almost. So like it can show you where all you've got broken things. It can show you your competitors. It can show you. It's got tons of great information to help you get your SEO strategy up and running and sort of help you do it ongoing. Like Ben said, you can get it and then use it real fast and then get rid of it. But as we've mentioned, and we'll say again, SEO is not a do it once and then you're good motion. You really need to think about it as an ongoing piece of your digital marketing work to help continue to promote the stuff. So I would highly recommend that as an investment for your organization to really keep yourself prominent, getting high rankings, keeping your site healthy and ranking well. So, and they're not paying me anything, I promise, to promote.
No, nor me. No. All right, we talked a bit about measuring as well, and what to measure then is the question, right? Like how do we know that our SEO is good or improving? So I've got a few different things that you could measure here. SEMrush has a site audit score that's kind of a measure of how well your site is doing on the technical side. And so that's kind of a 0 to 100 scale. That's a good one to keep track of as you have technical improvements to your site. Organic traffic, obviously in Google Analytics will show you exactly what kinds of traffic you're getting from organic search, and you can keep track of the pages that are addressed, your top topics, and see how they're doing in organic search over time. Inbound links, Google Search Console will give you a fairly decent estimate of how well linked your site is from other websites. SEMrush does a great job of this as well. And then organic conversions, right? So the conversion part is really important because that's where the kind of more of the payoff is, right? Traffic is great, but if the traffic isn't converting, then it's not so great.
Right.
So
get in your analytics. Yeah, you can see those drop-offs. You can see like, here's my path, and then suddenly I had a high bounce rate on this page. I had very low conversions on this page, or like you have a high click-through rate off your email. They come to that landing page, and then they don't convert, they don't fill out the form, they abandon, like all these different things you can find out. And then you can go back to those landing pages and tweak the content, tweak the layout, tweak the word, you can tweak all, but maybe tweak one thing at a time and then go, okay, let's let that run for a minute. And then, tweak another thing. And then that's another thing. I see people try to change like everything, and then you don't actually know kind of what maybe is making those results. So that's the other thing about a lot of the stuff where you're tweaking. It's like small, analyze, and then so you can kind of see what elements are actually making the difference. And then when you find sort of that recipe for success, it's easier to start from that starting point the next time you're making a landing page and looking for high conversions. You've already sort of seen it, but doesn't mean it's going to work every time for every topic. So same thing, you kind of still need to look at it, analyze it. Google Analytics is sort of also your best friend on this stuff. It's just seeing where things are happening. Your best free friend, SEMRush, I think is also good, but they work well together.
So a couple slides here just showing some examples.
Yeah.
I can
talk about this one a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a client of ours that we helped on a very specific kind of pointed SEO project. We got in and obviously ran some of these analytics from the first one. We do use SEMRush and sort of saw some trouble. These are, again, some of the things where you say, I'm just getting started. How can I know what's going on? You do have to kind of run some of those initial benchmarks and say, just let me know what's happening. So you go in and you run some of these analytics and it'll show you, you've got some errors on your site. Maybe you have some 404s, you've got some dead ends. You've got some of these, again, like your site health is not ranking very high. It's kind of in that danger zone where Google has seen issues on your site. And so it's going to give you the kind of a mediocre ranking and then give you some opportunities to say, here's some opportunities for improvement. And some of these tools will kind of show you, again, some of these areas and sort of like telling you where you're showing up in the search ranking. So we went through and we go through with a client like this and we go through and we fix all the errors we can find, all these warnings, things like that. We kind of reviewed their keywords, helped them sort of tweak some of those things again and sort of beef up and rethink about some of the positioning, some of those opportunities for sort of saying, maybe you are talking a little too internally. And we did some of that relevance and research to try and figure out maybe some of the keywords needed some adjusting, help them kind of redo some of the content. And actually they were missing a bunch of these meta descriptions, some of their alt tags on images. So we just kind of cleaned it up overall. And you can see there was a big improvement right away in some of the results that they were seeing, just going through and doing some basic hygiene on your site, really pushed down the errors, helped increase, got them into the first, much higher into the first 30 results from a search engine, which was great. And we actually then see a big bump in the traffic onto their site from these organic traffic sources. So it was actually a really good exercise for them where they went, oh, I didn't know. That's a big one too. I was like, I don't even know that there are these problems on my site till I run through some of these tools that can kind of give the diagnostics and the analytics. There's a good question in there about measuring the site health. So I know that has a lot to do with some of those problems that Google, finds on your site. So I don't know if you have a more, technical, in-depth answer for us, Ben.
Yes, the site health, the number that's used here is coming out of SEMRush.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, it basically crawls your website just like Google would, but then it flags errors and warnings, which are kind of, the same kind of thing, but different level of severity. And so that's where that 61% number is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other tools out there that will kind of do the same thing for free, but they're generally not very reliable and outdated. So
I think you said on a previous slide, like try to get your site health over 75. Is that what I think you said, like just to sort of, again, improve your rankings, and just to shoot for that as a goal? I mean, I try to get clients up into the 80 to 90 range, really.
Yep.
If you see you're below 75 to start, you've got some good work to do. You've got some links, broken things happening. You've got errors. Again, you need to go through. If you can get up in the 80, 85, 90, you start getting into those smaller tweaks that you're kind of like, okay, you fixed most of the major problems.
Yeah, right.
Now you're just working on some of that, improving your linking, improving some of these other things will start to get you kind of pushing up past 90, getting you into the A+ range.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was a great example. I wanted to share these graphs as well, just to talk the redesign or relaunch case for SEO. And if you don't pay attention to SEO when you're relaunching a website on the same domain, it can have bad effects, like in the upper left-hand graph here. So a lot of times when you relaunch a site, things get moved. You have content gets moved or taken away, or you switch URL structure, or maybe you switch a content management system, and it can take Google some time to kind of figure that out. And even if you do it all correctly, it can still take Google a little while to figure it out. But if you don't pay attention to SEO and make sure that you're redirecting old URLs to new URLs and telling Google what to do, it's going to impact the site for a long time. So I've seen it happen where things just drop off a cliff in terms of traffic when a site gets relaunched. I've seen it, the ugly situation here where things were going pretty well on the up and up, and then we relaunched and it never came back to where it was before. You can, however, build something from scratch or really improve things with good technical SEO, even during a relaunch or the launch of a brand new site. So it's definitely something to when you're relaunching as well. So just wanted to kind of share that case study too. Really nice questions along the way, but yeah, if anybody has any more.
Yeah, I think you ended on that one slide that makes me think of a great blog topic to really kind of talk through the best practices in SEO around our website relaunch, because I think that's something we find we spend quite a bit of time with folks on, specifically addressing, redirects and things like that. But I think there's a lot of additional pieces that sort of you kind of get in and go, yeah, that's a good time to run some of those diagnostics. Make sure you're really paying attention before you launch, like, oh, are there broken links in here that we forgot? Are there other sort of issues or errors that we can address pre-launch? That's the time to do it. So like when you're launching, you're hopefully immediately kind of pushing straight into the 90, plus space. And yes, Google may take a little while to sort of re-index and kind of find that these old pages that it knew where it was have now moved over here, but don't panic. Know that if you've done it right, it will kind of go, oh, I get it. You've just moved. I just have to go in and update your information in my phone, and like know that you're over here now. I'll still be able to find you, and those search terms will still be relevant for you. And I'll just kind of point people over here now. Yep. If you don't think about all those things in a relaunch, you saw some of those graphs just sort of like tip off the edge, and you're like, your organic traffic is taking a serious hit. So that can be a little devastating in a relaunch. Let us know if there's other questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. Obviously, we were just kind of scraping the surface of all the things you can do in SEO land. And thank you so much, Ben, for joining and sharing some of your deep knowledge on this topic. And if folks have follow-ups or want to talk more about how you can improve your digital presence with SEO, whether the website or others, let us know, and we'd always be happy to chat and help you get better results with your SEO, no matter what, across your digital presence. So thank you so much for joining, and we will talk again soon, hopefully.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. It was really, really great to be here today.
Appreciate it so much. And thanks, Katie, for making it all work behind the scenes. So everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll check you again later.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.